Pleased to have with us on the line John Malcolm, who is a senior legal scholar with the Heritage Foundation. Heritage.org is the website. John, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on, Tom. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. I see that both Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, whose parents both were refugees, say that no Syrian refugees should come into the United States. Chris Christie has said he would not even make an exception for, quote, orphans under fire. Jeb Bush has said refugees should only come to the United States from Syria if they are Christian. And when Ben Carson was asked who he would have in the U.S. coalition to defeat ISIS, he was not able to name a single ally of the United States in the region. And they asked him twice, and he was still unable to. This seems to be a little bit of a mess on the Republican side, particularly given that, the Mujahideen was created by Ronald Reagan in 1983 and, morphed into Al-Qaeda. And it's like the chicken's coming home to roost. I mean, don't we have a substantial moral obligation here on the one hand to take in some of the refugees from something that is the consequence of years and years of our policies? And then on the other hand, I mean, if you look at 9/11 and most of all the other terror attacks against the United States that were, the number one terrorist attacks against the United States have been right-wing terror. Outside of 9/11, numerically there have been more right-wing attacks in the United States. But if you take that out and you look at the Muslim attacks, virtually all of them, people came in on work visas or tourist visas. Why are we hysterical about refugees?
Well, that was quite a remarkable array of information that you just threw at me. There's an awful lot to unpack there, but let me try to do that. And let me begin by saying that this is, of course, a tragic situation, and my heart goes out to the legitimate refugees who were under assault from Syria and from indeed many of the Middle Eastern countries. But let's deal with a few facts here. So literally the day after the president said that ISIS had been contained, there were 6 simultaneous attacks.
That's a mischaracterization of what he said.
If I could just have a moment to say and then allow you to comment, Tom, I would appreciate it. So the day after the president made this statement, there were these 6 simultaneous attacks that were carried out in a coordinated fashion in Paris. They left over 130 people dead and hundreds more wounded. Several of these attackers have now been identified as having traveled with fake Syrian passports and having entered with a wave of thousands of refugees who were fleeing Syria. The United States is, as you know, a top target for ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and their affiliates, and they have announced their intention to infiltrate the United States through our refugee system. Now, like it or not, one problem that we have at the moment is that Syria is a failed state, and we have no access to any reliable records from the Syrian government to screen and vet any of the thousands of people who are applying for refugee status in this country. Now, we know nothing about these people. Now, while my heart goes out to them, the president's primary obligation is, of course, to keep us safe, and a very large resettlement program of the type that he is talking about does present a tremendous risk to Americans. I mean, look, in the last year alone...
I thought the president's primary obligation was to uphold the Constitution.
Oh, that is correct. That is absolutely
I mean, this
correct.
whole keep us safe thing is this Republican Cheney, we're all frightened little people, and we just, we're so scared. Tobacco kills 450,000 Americans a year, but we don't give a rat's ass about that. We're going to be terrified about the fact that a couple thousand people might die from terrorists. Oh, my God.
I'm sorry. I disagree with that. He is our commander-in-chief, and his primary obligation is to keep America safe and national security. In the past year alone, over 24 foreign-born individuals in this country have been charged with or convicted of terrorism-related offenses. And the fact of the matter is that we know nothing about the people who are being let into this country, and that is a very large security risk. 26 governors, at least one of whom is a Democrat, are objecting to this. It's, after all, their resources are going to be taxed and their citizens are going to be put at risk, and it is a significant risk. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't feel very, very badly, horribly for the situation that these people face. Yeah. However, it does present a tremendous risk to let in literally tens of thousands of refugees when we know nothing about them at a time in which ISIS has announced its intention to exploit the weaknesses in our refugee system to infiltrate our country and place operatives here.
Right. So that's your sales pitch.
It's not a sales pitch. That is That is my position. Now, you've made several other statements about Ben Carson and Ted Cruz, and I'm happy to respond to those if you would like.
Yeah. Well, I doubt you're surrogates for them, but feel free. Let me just say, I find it tragic. I think that's an astonishingly hard-hearted position. As I pointed out in the beginning, we created this mess, and you're talking about 10-year-old kids who are fleeing violence in their home countries. And Chris Christie says, even orphans under fire, to hell with them.
We could have a very healthy debate about who created this mess, and there are things that we can do and ought to do in order to provide humanitarian relief to the countries to which these refugees are fleeing. However, the president does have an obligation in Congress, by the way, which has plenary authority under our Constitution, which you have referred to control our borders and immigration. Its primary obligation is to keep us safe. And if you want to talk about something that I consider tragic, I consider it somewhat remarkable that the left, they applaud, they like it when states defy federal authorities when it comes to deporting immigrants who may pose a security risk. But now you don't like it when the states somehow are defying federal authorities.
Well, it's a nice straw man argument and an attempt to deflect the discussion. But I'm going to stay focused on this.
Please,
we have killed, because of Republican lies, George W. Bush lying us into the war in Iraq, which destabilized the Middle East. We have killed hundreds of thousands of people. We have created millions of refugees. And you're sitting here asserting that we have no responsibility to do anything about that, that some of those refugees should not come to the United States because, oh, my God, some of them might be terrorists. I'm telling you, John, the terrorists come in. You've got a couple million people a year who cycle through the United States on tourist visas and on work visas, mostly tourist visas, though.
That can be your pitch. The fact of the matter is that our borders are not secure, and we do not do an adequate job of keeping track of the people who are in this country, either illegally
we can't,
or who
unless we want to become a complete George Orwell state. We can't. What happened to the land of the free and the home of the brave? Why are the Republicans all we're the land of the free, and oh my God, we're frightened. Oh my God, keep those evil people away. We can't even bring Guantanamo people up to our prisons.
If you want to support having completely open borders,
no.
Let anybody in.
No, I am not a libertarian like the Koch brothers. I'm sorry, and and Rand Paul. No, I believe that countries.
Well, then where
should
are
have
you
borders.
Drawing the line? So how are you going to determine who gets in and who doesn't get in? And how
I think that we should. We have been
10-year-old children. They come in, but
I think we should be doing what we have been doing since the 1940s or 30s or 40s or 50s or whenever it was that we first really got serious immigration laws, and that is allow people who have legitimate refugee status to come into this country.
Well, on that we agree, and there are laws that have been written by Congress that has primary authority for immigration under our Constitution, and the president has to abide by them. He also has an obligation as our commander-in-chief to protect us from terrorist attacks, and we are a target. You may think that right-wing zealots somehow pose more of a threat to the national.
Well, they kill more people in the United States, according to the FBI.
That's true.
Right-wing zealots have killed more people every year, with the single exception of 2001, when you had 9/11. Every year for the last 30 years, right-wing zealots have killed more people than Muslims have in the United States. So you can look it up. It's the FBI. It's on their website, FBI.gov. But that's kind of a side issue. I mean, and a lot of that, by the way, is racially based violence. In other words, basically white terrorists, KKK. Oh, rats! We're out of time.
Oh, too bad.
John Malcolm. John, it was a good conversation. Senior legal scholar with the Heritage Foundation. Heritage.org is the website. John, thanks for dropping by today.
Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, good conversation. We'll be back.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.